Hi everyone, how's everyone doing? I hope you're all well. Now, before we kick off with this webinar, if anybody's having any sort of technical challenges in viewing or hearing this webinar session, what I'd highly recommend is to go through the usual kind of troubleshooting, I guess, that we all tend to go through. Something that doesn't work for us first time around. So if you are tuning in on a desktop or a laptop, feel free just to refresh your webinar or refresh this page right now for this webinar session on YouTube. Alternatively, if you are tuning in on a mobile device, feel free to come out of the YouTube app and then click back on the link that you received for this session. Hopefully everything should open up for you correctly so that you're able to fully enjoy this session. Now, one thing to note with this session is that live captioning is available. So if you did want captioning on throughout the course of this session, that is available. And all you need to do is to hover over onto this YouTube video and you'll see that that there's the letter CC inside of a small square box that and that icon is to turn on and off live captioning throughout the course of this session. So feel free to use that functionality if you wish to as well. Feel free to also grab yourself a pen and paper. This is going to be a rather interactive session going forward as well. So I hope everybody's set and ready. So welcome to this Google Digital Garage webinar session. All about how to find your career goals. My name is Rikesh. I'm going to be your presenter taking through the course of this session, which is going to last for approximately 60 minutes. So I'll kick off first with a little bit about me. So I'm a trainer for Google's digital skills program, Google Digital Garage, as well as that I'm also a marketer. So I work with digital marketer rather. So I work with businesses to help them to not only create, but to also grow an online presence in order to attract more customers and clients respectively to their business offering, essentially. Now, before I used to work in the world of marketing, I used to work in a completely different industry. And what actually helped me to, I guess, kind of pivot or jump into a new world, new industry, and kind of immerse myself within that is going to be some of the approaches and steps and the actual framework that we're going to be uncovering and unraveling throughout the course of this webinar session. So that's just a little bit about me. I'd also like to introduce to you at this stage my colleague and fellow Google Digital Garage trainer, and that is Tessa. Now, Tessa, whilst you won't see Tessa on screen, you will see Tessa appearing in the live chat. So the live chat is on the right-hand side of your YouTube screen. That is your space to get involved, drop in your comments, drop in your questions that you might have. There'll also be questions that you'll see on screen. So feel free to let myself and Tessa know your answers and thoughts to those questions, especially on a topic like careers. We all have our own kind of experiences that we kind of bring to the table. So we might have had certain experiences which are favorable, certain experiences that are less than favorable, let's say, but they kind of shape who we are today. And that kind of shapes our experiences, and then we can kind of use some of that experience going forward in terms of the rest of our career progression essentially as well. So feel free to use that live chat box. In order to type away in the live chat box, you will simply just need to sign into your YouTube account, which is very quick and easy to do. There's a little sign in button on the top right of your YouTube screen that you'll be able to use to sign into your YouTube account. Now, this session on Find Your Career Goals is one of many webinars that we actually run as part of a wider Google Digital Garage webinar offering. So if you have a look down below me where I'm pointing, you'll see that there is a link in the video description box, and that link takes you to the Google Digital Garage website, which I'm sure some of you are already familiar with, having signed up for this webinar session using that website as well. So if you go onto the live training tab, you'll see a list of lots of different webinars that we are running. If you are based in the UK, you'll also see a list of in-person training events that we are running as well. So be sure to kind of sign up for the in-person sessions. They are available for you to attend at no charge, just like the webinars are available to attend at no charge as well. And you'll find kind of a mix between kind of digital marketing related topics that we run sessions for, but also you'll find kind of more career-based webinar sessions that we run, just like today's on Find Your Career Goals. We also do another webinar on another career-based topic called Build a CV and Write a Cover Letter. I believe the next one is going to be running on the 23rd of June, but be sure to check the the live training tab on the Google Digital Garage website, kind of more up-to-date information on dates and times respectively as well. So be sure to kind of check out all those resources when you get a moment. Also, be sure to check out the online courses section of the Google Digital Garage website, where you'll see lots of different online courses that you can complete in your own time and at your own pace as well. There is a course on there in particular called the Fundamental of Digital Marketing course, which gives you an added bonus in that upon completion of that course, you'll actually receive a certificate at no charge from Google, recognizing that you've completed that course as well. So check out all those resources on the Google Digital Garage website when you do get a moment. But let's actually look at what we're going to be covering in this session, all about how to find your career goals. So in this session, we're going to be looking at kind of purpose first up. So before we actually go into the framework, we actually want to just take a moment, okay, kind of take that little step back and identify, well, why do we work? Not necessarily just why do we work, and why do we have aspirations in a particular career? What drives us? What's our kind of our motivating factor for doing what we do? What is our motivation for getting out of bed in the morning and then creating a plan of action for the day? What is that reason, first and foremost? Once we've done that, we're then going to be identifying and kind of going through a framework that we believe is a really useful framework in terms of either finding your career goals, or if you know what industry you want to work in and you've really got that clear in your mind, just kind of refining that a little bit more as well. So we're going to be going through that framework and approach, and we're going to be using some exercises. Some exercises we'll be able to complete within the course of this session, but then other exercises, they're ones which you jot down and then take away with you and actually complete them at a later time with other people as well. Some of them, as you'll hear about later on as well. So be sure to have a pen and a paper on hand, or if you have a note-taking device, we are kind of in the digital world. Feel free to use that. Whatever will kind of help you to kind of maybe absorb some of the information, but also be useful for you at the end of this session. That's where we're going to round off this session by looking at kind of the payoff. So we'll be looking at kind of what sort of questions can we ask of ourselves in terms of where do we go from here. So at the end of this 60 minutes, where do we go? What action steps do we take? So it's not necessarily a case of, well, at the end of our time for this webinar session, that you're just going to go about your day and that's it. We want to actually take tangible steps off the back of this to help us to grow within our career going forward as well. So before we get into the first part of this session, I want to draw your attention to this fantastic resource. You can see the title here, it says free career certificates from Google. So these are Google career certificates, which are flexible online training programs, which are provided by Google. And they are online training programs within specific topics, which are what Google have identified as both high growth and high demand career areas. And upon completion of these career certificates, as well as receiving the certificate itself, albeit in kind of digital format, this certificate will help to kind of improve and to kind of earn you job ready skills as well. Now, there are various topics and you'll be able to find out more information. So if you are based in the UK, you can definitely check out more information about this, as this is applicable to those of you who are based in the UK. You can find out some of the course topics. So we've got the likes of data analytics, project management. We've also got digital marketing and e-commerce. We've also got other topics that you'll find on there. I believe the latest topic that there is a Google career certificate for is cybersecurity as well. So be sure to kind of check out the topics on there. There's other ones on there that you'll find, such as the likes of IT support, and see which ones interest you, if they do at all. And if they do, feel free to kind of sign up, as Google have partnered up with various organizations in the UK, such as the likes of the Prince's Trust and the Department for Work and Pensions, in order to provide these online training courses for you at no charge as well. So be sure to check out that resources when you get a moment. But let's have a look at the first part of this session. The way that I want to kind of kick off the first part of this session is to ask you a question. So let me know in the chat just throughout the course of this session, because I do appreciate that kind of springing a question upon you at the very beginning of a webinar session can seem quite daunting at times. You might think, oh, I'm a little bit on the spot here. So feel free to kind of let me know your thoughts as we go along to this question, or kind of this, I guess, statement essentially, which is I want you to kind of think back to a time when you felt most fulfilled by a job, a volunteering activity, or a task in some capacity. So this can be either in the past, or it might be something that you are doing right now. Now you see that word fulfilled is actually highlighted in blue. And the reason why I wanted to highlight that is because we kind of define fulfillment in different kind of words and phrases, and kind of have different kind of feelings that kind of evoke from that word essentially as well. So the way that I personally look at kind of fulfillment is that it's a level of kind of satisfaction, but it's also a level of satisfaction which kind of brings happiness out of you as an individual as well. So just kind of maybe think about those isolated moments, or it might be something that you are, as you can see here, that you might be doing in the present that might be giving you that kind of that joy in terms of what you do. So if you are kind of in a performing arts kind of background, then feel free to kind of just think back to kind of times when you might have kind of had a standing ovation. I've got a really good friend of mine who works in the performing arts, and he really that's kind of gives him that sense of fulfillment when he gets the applause from an audience. Think back to a time if you are working in other industries where you might get your boss or a superior who says, "Yeah, do you know what? Great job. You've done excellently there." As well, that might kind of give you a sense of fulfillment as well. I know kind of for me, something that gave me a fulfillment, just something that springs to mind, is a number of years ago I actually delivered a training session on kind of coding, how to kind of use code in order to create a website. And I remember speaking to somebody who attended that training session, and at the end of it, they thanked me. We had a good conversation, and they actually messaged me out of the blue a few weeks after that, letting me know that they've actually received job interviews within the coding space, which is what they wanted to get into as well. And that kind of gave me some sense of fulfillment, not because they kind of came to my session, they learned all the knowledge, and then they kind of were able to apply for jobs. It's more of a case of I felt happy for them as well, and maybe I've kind of contributed either through a conversation or either something that they might have picked up throughout that training session that kind of led them down that path as well. So that kind of that's just kind of one example, but I'm sure many of you can think of other examples as well. So feel free to let me know throughout the course of this session. Now you might be kind of wondering, why are we actually kicking off with this question of kind of thinking back when we felt kind of most fulfilled by an activity or a task that we've done in a previous or present role, or kind of some volunteering that we've done. And the reason for that is because of this statistic that you can see here on screen. So you can see that 3 out of 10 workers in the UK, which is where I'm based, do not believe that they have good prospects for career development. Now that actually makes me a little bit sad. I want kind of that figure to be as low as possible. Ideally, 0 out of 10. But I guess if we've got to have this statistic, maybe 1 out of 10 workers don't believe that they've got good prospects for career development. We want to kind of shift that number and make it as low as possible, because we want everyone who works in whatever kind of career and whatever industry space to feel that they can progress within that as well. So in order for us to kind of feel that, sometimes it's kind of useful to kind of take that step back. Even if we are in a space that we fully want to work in, we're fully dialed into it, it's nice just to kind of think about, well, okay, let me refine my career goals. Or if you're in that kind of space, which is what I was in a number of years ago before I kind of moved into the marketing space, and you're wondering, well, what can I do? What space will I be valuable in as well? Then I want to kind of reveal to you kind of the framework that we're going to be going through for kind of the remainder of this webinar session. And in terms of kind of finding your career goal, or on a wider scale, finding, I guess, your ideal type of role or job, even though your job can be progressed, remember, with career progression, we want to kind of encompass kind of 3 elements. The first of those you can see here is kind of highlighted with this blue circle, which is something that you enjoy doing. So this is something that you find kind of genuine pleasure in doing. You might just do this every day, perhaps, as well. You've then got a second element, which is something that you're good at. So this is something that kind of plays to your natural strengths here. And the third element of kind of finding a fulfilling job role and or career on a wider scale is something that people value. So what I mean by something that people value is that someone somewhere out there will be happy to pay you to do whatever you can provide, and that there's provided that there's a market out there for it as well. So all three of these elements we've kind of created into kind of this Venn diagram here. Now, just to kind of provide a little bit of context with each one of these circles in isolation won't help us to kind of find a fulfilling career. So if it's just something that you enjoy doing, then it's just a little bit of fun, as you can see here. So I enjoy, after maybe a long day of working, I maybe enjoy sometimes to play video games. And for me, it's just a little bit fun. It's not something I'm necessarily good at. I'm probably not something that I'm going to be paid for. I'm not going to be paid for doing that. Although I do appreciate the games industry where people are gaming and people are viewing them gaming as well. But I'm kind of missing that key element of being good at it myself as well. But you can also see if it's something that you're good at, but you don't necessarily enjoy doing it and you're not necessarily getting paid for it, then it's just like practice chores. So maybe like washing the dishes, doing the laundry, those kind of tasks that just kind of practice chores. You're good at it, but you don't necessarily enjoy it. And it's not something that kind of people out there are going to kind of pay you to do that. There's not a market for it as well. And similarly, if you're working in a job that you're getting paid for, but you don't necessarily enjoy doing it, you're not particularly good at it, and it could be a sign. It's not a definite, but it could be a sign that it might not be for you as well. But this is something which will very much be a judgment call on your end as well. But you can see that there's some overlaps here. So if it's something that you enjoy doing and you're getting paid for it, but you're not necessarily good at it, then it could be a signal or a sign that you are in a low paid job. Or a low skill job rather than a low paid job, your low skill job. If you're getting paid for something that you're good at, but you don't enjoy doing it, it could be a signal that you're feeling bored in the job that you're doing, in the role that you're doing, perhaps as well. And you can see with the final overlap here with something that you're good at and something you enjoy doing, it could just be a skilled hobby. Because you're not getting that fine element, which is getting payment for it as well. So just by that kind of process of kind of denomination there, where we essentially want to be is in this middle section here where there's no writing here. So we want to overlap of all three of these circles, which is essentially our sweet spot. Now, this Venn diagram that you can see here on screen has actually been kind of inspired and adapted by something known as the Japanese practice of Ikigai. And be sure to kind of check this out. It's a really useful and interesting method or methodology, which is to help to identify your purpose or reason for being at times on kind of a wider kind of life scale as well. So we've kind of adapted and molded that for the purposes of this webinar session with this Venn diagram to kind of fit the mold of finding a career goal for us as well. And it's important that we kind of go into and dissect each one of these circles in turn, which we will go through in just a moment. Now, before we do that, I want to kind of ask you a question here, which you can see here on screen. So let me know your thoughts in the chat as we go along throughout the course of this session. So what is the top motivator for working? So before you kind of go into the chat and kind of type away and be like, Rakesh, come on, it's obvious. It's money, right? It's to earn money. That is the top motivator for working. Let me kind of make this question a little bit more challenging. So let's take kind of money off the table for a moment and just think, well, if money let's say we've got enough money for kind of food, water, and shelter, kind of the necessities, I guess, in terms of kind of living. Then what becomes our motivator for working? Why do we kind of work within a specific industry? Why do we work in a particular job? What kind of motivates us to continue to do that? And there's no kind of right answer here with this, because this is something which is very subjective. It really depends on each individual. So for me, in terms of what is, I guess, my top motivator for working is making an impact with other people. That's something which is a top motivating factor for me at working. However, what I want to do is I want to just reveal to you kind of the answer. And this is an answer which is actually just based upon a survey of a snapshot of people. So it's not kind of the answer to this question. It's just a answer. Now, the top motivator, after kind of sampling a selection of people, what they found is a top motivator at work is recognition of the work that you do. It's kind of like that pat on the back, or it might come in different forms. It might be that you receive a pay rise. It might be that you just get a well done from a superior like your boss. That is something which can be a motivating factor for you to do better, for you to do more. And kind of thinking back in terms of my kind of employment history, I probably did my best work when I was getting that recognition of the work by a superior going forward as well. So feel free to kind of just think about that. Feel free to jot that down. And if you wish to share in the live chat, feel free to do that as well. So let's have a check in, see if there's any sort of comments or questions that are coming through at this stage. So I can't see any comments or questions at this stage, but if there are, feel free to let me know. Feel free to let Tessa know in the live chat, and a combination of us both will be able to kind of provide our thoughts on them as we go along. So let's actually move on now to actually dissecting each one of those circles in turn in terms of what kind of makes up a fulfilling career for us as well. And starting off with the blue circle, which is something that you enjoy doing. So with that in mind, what I want you to do is to grab yourself a pen and a paper or a note-taking device, just so you can kind of jot down notes, as we are going to be going into an exercise to help us identify things that we enjoy doing about work. So what I'm going to show you in just a moment are 8 phrases. So you'll see 8 phrases on screen in just a moment, which describe things that people tend to enjoy about working. So I want you to jot down as many of those 8, a minimum of 3 though. I want you to jot down a minimum of 3 things that you enjoy about working out of that list of 8. So let me just show you that list here. So you've got secure and stable work. You've got having ideas. You've got helping others. You've got working independently. You've got work-life balance. You've got being an expert. You've got organizing people, and you've got solving problems as well. Now, these 8 phrases are not just kind of 8 phrases that have kind of been plucked out of thin air at all. These are 8 phrases that have actually been worked on by Professor Edgar Schein since kind of the 1970s, and it continues to be kind of refined today, because in terms of what we enjoy about work kind of years ago, it is kind of slightly different to maybe how it is today. Maybe there'll be an additional one, or something may kind of be altered in terms of the phraseology of one of these options here. So it might be to do with kind of remote working, hybrid working, something that's become more and more on the rise over the past few years or so as well. So feel free out of this list of 8 to jot down a minimum of 3 here. So for me, if I'd say secure and stable work, yep. I enjoy having ideas. Actually, no, I'm not really an ideas person, but I enjoy helping others. I enjoy working independently. I enjoy having a work-life balance, which I find very, very important to have. Being an expert, organizing people, and solving problems. So maybe the 2 that I probably wouldn't pick, I'd probably pick 6 out of 8 here. The only 2 that I probably wouldn't pick for me is having ideas and organizing people. I think they're the 2 that I'm like, okay, that's fine. That's not necessarily things I necessarily enjoy about working. But remember, this is going to be different for you as well. So once you've got kind of a sample of those phrases and a minimum of 3, what I want you to then do is to rank your top 3. So this is why I mentioned it was rather important to mention at least 3 and jot down at least 3 things that you enjoy about working, because I want you to then rank those top 3, with number 1 being your thing that you enjoy most about working. So I'll show you the list of 8 phrases once again. So if I was to kind of choose this for myself in terms of the top 3 things that I enjoy about working myself, so number 3 for me would be I enjoy working independently. Number 2, I enjoy having a work-life balance. And number 1 for me would probably be helping others. I think that would be for me. However, there might be people who are joining on this webinar session. You might be problem solvers. That might be the number one for you, solving problems. It might be that you're somebody who's very much a creative. So having ideas might be something which is very paramount about in terms of kind of what you enjoy about working as well. So feel free to kind of jot these down and kind of just circle your 1, 2, and 3 on your piece of paper. And feel free, if you are comfortable, to do so in the live chat. Myself and Tessa would love to kind of hear some of your top 3s as we go along. Now, that's kind of one part of this exercise here, is identifying things that we enjoy about working, and kind of identifying our top 3 things that we enjoy about working out of this list of 8 phrases. Now, what I want to now move on to is I'm going to show you these same 8 phrases once again, but what I want you to do is to create a separate list here of things, not necessarily things that you enjoy about working. Just pick out the things that you have either done previously or you're doing in your current work, or job role specifically as well. So do you have secure and stable work? Are you somebody who in previous roles or are currently somebody where you are able to have ideas, you are helping others, you are able to work independently, so maybe through kind of a contracted or a consultant kind of basis? Do you have a work-life balance? Do you feel like you have that kind of that detachment at times whereby you might kind of move away from your workstation? That's it, right? There's going to kind of a clear disconnect between kind of your personal life compared to kind of your work in general as well. Are you an expert in terms of the work that you do or have done in the past? Have you organized people? And have you been a problem solver as well? So for me, I'd probably say probably the majority, if not all, of these I've actually done. So this is kind of just changing the phraseology of how we're thinking about this list of 8 phrases on screen. So it's not necessarily the things that we enjoy about work. This is what we've done or what we're doing in the course of work right now. And hopefully now, once you actually jotted down this second list, you will have kind of 2 lists, ideally side by side or just on separate pieces of paper. And what I want you to do is compare these 2 lists. So I want you to have a look at the list of what you've just jotted down, which is things that you've done throughout the course of work, and compare that to the list that you wrote down first, which is the things that you enjoy doing when it comes to working as well. And just compare and contrast those lists. Because if you find that the things that you enjoy about doing, the things that you enjoy with work are not things that you've done yet, either previously or you're doing right now, then that can give you food for thought to think, well, how can I do more of the things that I enjoy about working? How can I be in a role where I'm able to have more ideas, where I can do problem solving, where I can feel like I'm really helping others, or where I'm able to have that kind of clear work-life balance distinction as well. So it's important to kind of give us that kind of that kind of evaluation more so than anything else. We can actually evaluate to see where we are in terms of our role and our career in general as well. Now, if both of the lists are kind of very similar in terms of things that we enjoy about working compared to the things that we are doing right now, then that might just help us think, well, yeah, I'm kind of enjoying what I'm doing right now, which is great. But then it might just give us food for thought. Well, how can I do more of the things that I enjoy about doing for work as well? So how can I maybe pivot and maybe progress within the industry that I'm in right now as well? So it doesn't necessarily have to be a case of, right, I'm working in this industry, how do I make that clear jump into another industry or another world in general? So it doesn't have to be like that. It might just be, well, how can I progress within the industry that I'm in right now as well? And this is something that you can kind of take away from this session, kind of evaluate for yourself after having a look at both of these lists going forward as well. So with that in mind, let's have a check-in, see if there's any sort of comments or any questions, which I can't see any at this stage. I'm sure many of you are either kind of jotting things down or just kind of evoking maybe that conversation in your mind to think, well, how do I do this and how do I do that? Are there things which I need to kind of do more of in terms of the things that I enjoy? Is that what I'm kind of looking towards in general as well? Or is it a case of that you're thinking, well, there's a lot of things which I enjoy, which I'm not doing or I haven't done in the past. And maybe that's food for thought for me to think, right, well, how do I actually now do more of those things? Whether it be staying within the same industry or whether it be moving and pivoting into a new industry as well. So that's kind of the first element of something that you enjoy doing, which will kind of make up the I guess the trinity of the things that once combined will kind of give us that kind of more clarity in terms of a career goal and a career kind of pathway for us going forward as well. So let's now have a look at something that you're good at. So this is that kind of that green circle here. So this is something which kind of plays to our natural strengths here. So if I was to ask you right now, what are you good at? What would you be thinking right now? You're thinking, oh, right, this guy Rikesh here on this webinar session, he's asking me, what am I good at? How do I answer that? What we tend to do is if somebody asks us that question, what am I good at? We tend to go internally, don't we? And ask ourselves, all right, Rikesh, what are you good at? What are you good at? What can you say? And then we're kind of drawing upon our previous experiences to kind of identify what we're good at. So I want you to kind of hold that in the back of your mind in terms of our first kind of port of call, our default port of call when somebody asks you, what are you good at, is to rely upon our own thinking and our own kind of come up with our own kind of answers and conclusions. So with that in mind, I want to kind of introduce you to something known as the Dunning-Kruger effect. I don't know if some of you have heard of the Dunning-Kruger effect. If you have, let me know in the chat. So the Dunning-Kruger effect was actually named after two social psychologists, one with the surname Dunning, one with the surname Kruger. And this effect, this Dunning-Kruger effect, essentially describes how us as humans are notoriously awful at knowing what we're good at, and also on the flip side, what we're not so good at in terms of our strengths and our weaknesses here. So what the Dunning-Kruger effect looked at with these two social psychologists was that they actually looked at how our perception of our abilities changes as we gain more experience. So let's kind of run through this Dunning-Kruger effect with an example. So you can see here on screen that there's an image here with people who are singing, possibly karaoke, it looks like, with the machine there and the microphone. So we're going to use that kind of that skill set of singing as an example here. And you can see that there's a graph here on screen also. So just to kind of explain this graph, you've got on the horizontal axis, you've got our competence level. So how good are we at singing? And we've got kind of a couple of kind of gradings here of none. We've got average, and then we've got expert. So we've got that kind of grading system there. So the more that we go towards the right-hand side of competence, the better we are at singing here. And then you've also got our confidence level. So the higher we are on that kind of that horizontal, on that vertical axis, then the more confident we are at singing as well. So for the purpose of this kind of slide that you can see on screen, I want you just to focus on that red dot first off. So let's say hypothetically, and we can do this as a kind of a collective on this webinar session. So let's say that all of us who are tuned in for this webinar session have never sang before. Now, I know for myself that's an absolute lie, because I absolutely love doing car karaoke just by myself while I'm on the motorway, just driving along, doing a bit of car karaoke. Not very good at it, by the way, but I enjoy doing it. And it's not something that anyone's going to pay me for, and it's not something that I'm particularly good at all either as well. But it's just something which I enjoy. But let's say hypothetically we've never sang before. So you can see where the red dots, we're at kind of the 0 point, whereby we've never picked up a microphone, we've never sang before, and our confidence levels are at a 0 because we've never done it before either as well. So let's kind of move things on here. Let's say that all of us here on this webinar session, we all kind of went to a karaoke venue, and we kind of push past our fears of singing in public and generally getting onto the microphone, and we all got up there on stage and actually sang for the very first time. Now, if we look at that graph again here, we can see that that red dot has jumped, and it's jumped astronomically. So you can see that our confidence levels have skyrocketed. However, the one thing that you will note here is that our confidence level in terms of how good we are at singing has only moved a little bit. Because bearing in mind, we've only sang for the very first time, but our confidence levels are absolutely sky high. Now, what the Dunning-Kruger effect at this juncture actually explains is how us as humans, at this kind of moment, at this point in time when we're learning something new or kind of a skill, with this kind of singing example here, we tend to overestimate our abilities because we kind of push past that fear barrier at times. We do something for the very first time. We think, wow, amazing, once I've done this for the very first time. And you might have kind of experienced this for yourself as well. I know when I was much younger, I kind of learned, I was kind of learning how to play the electric guitar. And when I learned to do kind of one chord change on a song that I was learning, I thought, wow, I'm amazing already. I should be playing some of the summer festivals that are coming up. I should be there right up on stage. I'm a professional now, because your confidence level just skyrockets because you've learned to do one thing. It might be something that you've learned how to do a simple sum on a spreadsheet, and now you think, wow, I'm amazing. I should be able to do this, that, and the other on spreadsheet software as well. So you might kind of have your own example that you can look to kind of recall upon as well. But what the Dunning-Kruger effect here explains is that we tend to overestimate how good we actually are, because you can see here, because we've just sang for the very first time, it doesn't necessarily mean that we become an expert or become average at all in terms of our confidence levels. It just means that our confidence levels have actually raised in general as well. So if we move things on a little bit further here, you can see, and kind of let's just kind of set the scene here. Let's say that after that karaoke event that we all went to together, some of us thought, do you know what? I really enjoyed that. I want to take singing a little bit more seriously. So as well as doing a little bit more karaoke here and there, some of us have actually taken some singing lessons, right? So we've taken a few singing lessons. We can now sing in tune without breaking any of the windows that are nearby, which is great. So you can see here with the red dot, where kind of tracking the red dot on this graph here, that our confidence level has actually now moved to average. So we're actually a very average singer. So we're proficient in singing to an average degree here. But what you can see is that our confidence level has actually dropped. Now, naturally, we would think, well, if our confidence level is where that peak is that you can see right there, which we've left there, that would just carry on going and kind of skyrocketing even further the more that we're singing, even, going to the lengths of taking up a singing lesson. But actually, it drops. And the reason for that is because the Dunning-Kruger effect in this instance actually explains how when we get to this point in time and learning something new, we tend to underestimate our abilities. And this doesn't come from kind of a place of kind of false modesty where people are saying to you, oh, Rikesh, you're amazing at singing. You should be headlining. You should be kind of the warm-up act for some of the major artists in the world as well. And I'm just saying, no. But really, I think, yeah, I'm amazing. I really should be doing some of the big festivals and concerts out there. It doesn't come from a place of false modesty at all. Where this kind of underestimating our ability and kind of the more kind of subtle confidence that we have, as opposed to absolute skyrocketed confidence that we did have previously, is that we're not necessarily looking back in terms of where we have come from us, the very first time where we were kind of shaking on stage a little bit because we were a bit nervous and apprehensive about singing in front of people. We're actually looking, because we're more proficient now, we're actually looking ahead and thinking, well, how much further do I need to refine my singing skills in order for me to be an expert in this field? That's where kind of the confidence level has kind of dropped down a little bit as well, because we're kind of like, we're thinking ahead in terms of how much further do I need to refine this skill in order to become a proficient and expert singer as well. So that's where that's where we kind of lie there as well. And that's where the Dunning-Kruger effect, as I mentioned, is kind of saying that we tend to underestimate our abilities. Now, the point in time where we have kind of a sense of accurate awareness in terms of our confidence and competence levels in turn is when we become an expert at a skill. And that's when we can truly reflect, right, this is our confidence levels where the red dot is here. So you can see that it has gone up from the average. But the one thing that you will note here on this graph is that where you see that peak from the very first time that we actually picked up the microphone and started singing, that is still higher than where the confidence level is right now with this red dot on screen. So you can see that that confidence wasn't really accurate at all. And now where we are, where we can accurately reflect our confidence levels based upon our competence levels of being an expert singer, we now have got to the point where we are proficient enough to think and judge for ourselves, what am I good at? So all of this kind of Dunning-Kruger effect essentially kind of draws us to the conclusion that in order to fully understand our strengths, we actually need to look outside of ourselves. So with that in mind, we've got another exercise coming up here. So feel free to grab that pen and paper and just kind of jot down some of the points that you'll see here on screen in just a moment. So what I want you to first of all do is I want you to jot down 3 people who know you well. So these are not 3 people who you know well. It's worded very specifically. It's 3 people who know you well. Now, our natural thought would be to pick our best friend or a sibling or a parent, someone that's really, really close to us. But what we want to do is we want to pick people who have known us for a long period of time, but can be kind of somewhat objective and somewhat kind of practical with this, rather than having kind of a parent who says, no, you're amazing at everything, you should do this, you should do that, you're absolutely amazing, and not kind of have that level of kind of not impartiality, but that kind of constructive critiqueness, which we probably essentially need in order for this kind of exercise to work to its best ability. So rather than picking someone really, really close to you, pick someone who knows you well. So this could be someone that you worked with for a long period of time, who knows you well. This could be a family friend who knows you well. So it's just kind of thinking of these different kind of people within your kind of your support network in general as well. Now, once you've jotted down and chosen those 3 people, I want you to then jot down these 3 sentence starters. Now, where you can see the X's, I want you to replace them with your name. So I always ask Rikesh for help with. Rikesh knows a lot about. You can always ask Rikesh too. Now, we don't need to fill in the rest of this sentence. We just need to jot down these 3 sentence starters. So as you're jotting these down, I'm just going to run things on a little moment here. You can see some examples of ways in which people can end this sentence. But this is just for kind of your benefit, because what I want you to do with these 3 sentence starters that you can see here on the top of the screen, I want you to give these 3 sentence starters to those 3 people who know you well, and give them maybe a week, 2 weeks, whatever their diary is looking like, and then just say to them, look, let's reconvene, and I'd love to kind of get your answers to these. They might think you're a little bit strange for kind of asking this in general. If they do ask it, feel free to say, yeah, I joined this Google Digital Garage webinar session about finding your career goals, and we went through this exercise and they've asked me to do this. That's fine. I'm happy to kind of take that. But it's a really, really useful exercise, because as we've seen from the Dunning-Kruger effect, it's important to look outside of ourselves in general as well. And the best way to do that is to pick 3 people who know you well. So they might kind of answer with things such as you're good at sharing knowledge, you're good at staying focused, you're good at investigating, you're good at socializing, you're great at having new ideas. You know a lot about using data. You can always ask. You can always ask this person to be a problem solver as well. And what you will find when you get these responses back after you reconvene with them, either in person or through kind of a video call, what you'll get back is you will start to find a trend. So more than one of these three people will probably answer the same or along the same lines, or along kind of the similar lines to each other. And what that will become, that could become a trend. So it could be that Rikesh knows a lot about planning, yeah, and two people have mentioned that, or all three people have mentioned that as well in some different kind of shape or form. So that can then give you thought, oh, maybe I'm good at planning, and that kind of gives us a trend for us to go off and kind of build off in terms of what we know in terms of our strengths. Because as we well know, in order to actually truly know what our strengths are, we actually have to look outside of ourselves. So that's a really useful exercise for you to take away with you. Give those 3 sentence starters to 3 people that know you well. You might just think, oh, that's kind of a bit of a small snapshot. Maybe I want to get another 3 people. Feel free to do that as well. Just until you kind of find that commonality, just until you kind of find that trend. And that will then become your strength that you are actually good at, rather than getting out of our own head and trying to judge what am I good at, what am I not so good at. We kind of will get a clearer, more definitive answer from asking other people who know as well going forward. So with that in mind, let's have a check-in, see if there's any sort of comments or any questions, which I can't see any at this stage. If there are any questions before the end of this session, feel free to drop that into the chat, and either Tessa and myself will be able to kind of drop our thoughts in regards to that going forward. So with that in mind, let's move to our third and final element, and kind of the red circle here is something that people value. So this is, remember, this is something that people value. So there's a market out there for what you do, and that someone somewhere out there will be happy to pay you for you doing a certain thing. Now, before we actually get into some questions to consider, I want to at this stage kind of just show you a few kind of examples of individuals who have actually gone through this find your career goals process of these 3 elements of something that you enjoy doing, something that you're good at, and something that people value. So I want to first of all share with you Abigail's story. So Abby worked in technology at a large entertainment business, but then changed her career to focus on baking cakes. You can see that Abby's Pantry started in London, has now moved to Edinburgh. So if we kind of deconstruct Abby's journey here, something that Abby enjoyed or enjoys doing is baking cakes. Something that Abby is good at is baking cakes as well. Now, the reason why she was that kind of answered that second circle of something that you're good at is because she was getting external feedback when she was bringing her cakes into the office. When she was getting feedback from people who know her well, not necessarily the ones that are very, very close to her, but other people who know her well. And they're saying, yeah, you're amazing. You know, you should do this professionally. You should do this full time. You should be doing some of the cooking shows that are online as well. Some of the baking shows that are online rather as well. And that led her to kind of, in a way, kind of take the leap of faith and actually start off Abby's Pantry. And you can see that it's been a success going forward. So that's kind of using the elements with Abby's story here going forward as well. And you've also got Claire and Rachel's story. So Claire and Rachel, who are friends, as you can see here on screen, they were both working in completely different industries themselves. But what they decided to do was to join forces, set up a website, How Do I Do, which is a directory of wedding suppliers and wedding planners for all couples. And the reason that was kind of this venture between Claire and Rachel was actually born was because they enjoyed giving recommendations to their friends, their family, the people in their support network, recommendations to a good wedding caterer or a great wedding DJ or anybody else kind of within the wedding space, you know, things like kind of wedding planners as well. They enjoyed doing that. They knew that they were good with their recommendations because they were getting feedback from the people saying, oh yeah, great. great tip about contacting this caterer. They did a fantastic job at our wedding. They were getting that kind of feedback coming through. But then what they also realized was there's a market out there for us to set up a website, which is a central place where people can actually find our recommendations of wedding suppliers and planners, respectively, as well. So that's kind of two examples from kind of a business kind of entrepreneurial kind of standpoint here. There. Now, the third example and final example I want to kind of show you here before we kind of go into some of the questions to ask ourselves with this final elements of finding a fulfilling career is Shaquille's story here. So Shaquille worked for an organization, and when he came to the Google Digital Garage and kind of went through this Find Your Career Goals process, he was made redundant. So his plan of action was to, let's have a look through all of these elements. Something that he enjoyed doing was working independently. You can see that in brackets here on the paragraph on screen. And that was one of those 8 phrases that we saw on the screen earlier on with that exercise. Something that he was good at is HR, human resources, which is the field and the area that he'd been working within for a long period of time anyway. And he got a lot of feedback from previous people that he'd worked with, even colleagues as well, saying, Shaquille, you're amazing in this field. You got a really fantastic, fantastic skill set for this sector. And then through that, he was able to kind of progress and to become a HR consultant, which allowed him to work independently through the consultancy basis, but also was able to kind of work within kind of a framework whereby he's able to actually kind of build connections. You can see he's done rather well on LinkedIn, kind of growing his connection base, actually starting a hashtag as well to help him to find clients going forward as well. So that's just kind of a few examples, some stories there, just to kind of put that framework into, I guess, practice a little bit as well. Something that hopefully many, if not all of you tuning into this webinar session will do going forward as well. So some questions in this kind of final segment to kind of identify and ask ourselves is, in terms of who would value what I'm good at and enjoy, what I'm good at as well, and kind of make use of that, is think about which jobs or professions, which job titles, which job roles will I be able to put my skill set, my value to good use. So list kind of some of the job titles. This is something where we can just jump online, actually have a look at some of the job roles, have a look at descriptions. I think, oh yeah, this is the job role that would actually marry up with my with my skill set and what I can essentially bring to the table. Then think about kind of which businesses. So maybe list down a list of lots of different businesses, from maybe the large corporate organizations right the way through to maybe startup businesses that you find online that might be able to where you might be able to kind of actually develop your skill sets and actually grow and progress within that industry as well. And then also think about kind of the value. Think about who's going to be willing to kind of pay you to do what you do, or what you can do essentially as well. So just kind of refine that kind of business list as well. And obviously that's going to be reflective upon kind of vacancies that are around within that sector going forward as well. Now, in terms of kind of looking for kind of job roles in general, once we've kind of found our kind of refined our career, refined our kind of career goals, we're actually finding our career goals through that framework that we've looked at throughout this session, is we can actually look online. As is the case most of the time these days, we can find things online. Most of the times, if we need to find something, we'll typically Google it, as has become kind of the verb over the years. So you can see here on the left-hand side that this is a screenshot of the Google Jobs board, where you can actually search for jobs depending upon location, depending upon job title, which hopefully once you've actually got identified some of the job titles that kind of line up with something that people value, will value from you as well. You can actually use that to your advantage on the Google Jobs board. You can also kind of filter by when certain vacancies are posted as well, so you can get ahead of the curve and start to kind of submit a CV, cover letter, etc. as well. And you'll see kind of with the screenshot here with Google Jobs board is that it's very much kind of a splash screen. So you'll see things like kind of the job description, but if you want to apply, then it might just have links to kind of apply on a certain jobs board website, or it might say apply on LinkedIn as well. Now, speaking of LinkedIn, I personally can't recommend LinkedIn enough. Because a number of years ago, before I worked in the marketing sector, and when I worked in a completely different industry, I actually got headhunted through LinkedIn just by having a profile set up, and just posting every so often about what I do, or things that I've done in my current role. And that was really, really useful to kind of get headhunted. And I felt kind of really elated for so many days afterwards. And that kind of being headhunted kind of led me down the path of going in for what they called a conversation or a chat. And that 10-minute conversation and the chat turned into a job offer off the back of that as well. So having a LinkedIn kind of personal profile setup is very, very useful for kind of putting yourself in the shop window, especially because LinkedIn over time has actually become very much kind of a hotbed for recruiters to be on that platform. And then naturally you are going to be looking out for candidates who kind of match some of the vacancy descriptions that they are hiring for in general as well. Now, you might find yourself with certain roles, especially if you are pivoting, or if you're making that kind of that leap into a new industry, a new sector in general. You might think, well, how do I actually bridge that experience gap? Because you might have all the enthusiasm in the world to work in a particular industry, but how do you actually bridge that experience? Because there will be other candidates who have got lots of other experience, compared to yourself. So a good way to actually bridge that gap is to volunteer or consider volunteering. Now, I appreciate that for everybody, it's not going to be a viable option, because a lot of the times volunteering typically is unpaid. Now, you can get paid volunteer experience, mind you, but it's definitely something to consider in general as well. You've got a couple of websites here. You've got Do It and you've got Charity Job, which are kind of volunteering websites based in the UK. I'm sure you can actually find volunteering kind of posting websites in other countries as well, depending on where you are tuning in from as well. So be sure to kind of check all of that out, because I think it's really important to be aware of the fact that in order to find jobs and find kind of roles and find a career path that we are looking to, once we've kind of gone through that framework, being online is a really fantastic space for us to kind of work with and operate in as well, because not only can we put ourselves in the shop window in places such as the likes of LinkedIn, but we can be active and proactive by looking on places such as the Google Jobs Board and other job board websites as well. So in terms of the payoff for this webinar session, feel free to kind of jot down some of these kind of sentence starters, and for you to complete them as well. So today I'm going to write out this framework in terms of the 3 circles and identifying, well, how do I go about answering all of these? Or maybe I want to refine the first exercise of things that I enjoy about work, those 8 phrases. Next week I'm going to approach those 3 people who know me well and go through the exercise that we looked at earlier on. This month I will have so that could be this month I will have attended the Build a CV and Write a Cover Letter webinar session. So if you have a look the link in the video description box below, you'll be able to sign up for the Build a CV and Write a Cover Letter session. I believe it is on the 23rd of June. But be sure to check out the link to find out up-to-date dates and times for that upcoming session. This year I will have this can be whatever you want. This year I'll have kind of I will have a job within a specific career. It could be I will have bridge the experience gap by doing some volunteering in terms of a role that you're looking to work within going forward as well. So with that in mind, let's have a final check-in on any questions, which I can't see any at this stage. So let's have a look into our next step. So So one of our next steps is be sure to check out, if you are based in the UK, check out Google Career Certificates. Fantastic, flexible online training programs, including topics in being IT support, project management, data analytics, user experience design, UX design. You've also got digital marketing and e-commerce, and also cybersecurity as well. And yeah, you can find out more information using the link there on screen. So I hope that you found this webinar session useful. If you did, both myself and Tessa would appreciate a little bit of feedback. We've got a feedback form here on screen for you to use. Also, be sure to check out the link in the video description box below to sign up for more webinar sessions, and also have a look at some of the in-person training events that we are running within the UK, if you are based in the UK yourself. And also continue your learning. You can do that through some of the online courses on the Google Digital Garage website. Remember, it's the Fundamentals of Digital Marketing course, which is a course that you'll receive as an added bonus, recognizing that you've completed that course as well. So apart from that, I want to say a massive thank you to Tessa, whom I'm sure agrees has been a wonderful chat moderator, and thank you to you all for tuning into this Google Digital Garage webinar session. And I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you. Goodbye.